History created in the most dramatic fashion that you can ever imagine. Now check that, you cannot imagine a World Cup final being decided on a boundary count. England and New Zealand could not be separated over 100 overs. They could not be separated over 2 super overs. It goes down to the third criteria to decide the 2019 world champions, and those are Eoin Morgan's England. It's a day that England will remember, they will celebrate. The asterisk that may come with this victory is of little significance to those that support Eoin Morgan and the Three Lions. What a final we have had. Without doubt, the closest, without doubt, the greatest in the history of the tournament, and it served up a spectacle that cricket so desperately needed. 482 runs. It's a 241 versus 241. Forget 300, 350, 400. In the end, it came down to who held their nerve, and it didn't just matter on that, it mattered on how luck favored. 6 runs that came off a ricocheting overthrow of a diving Ben Stokes, a catch on the boundary by Trent Boult, who was so good through the course of this tournament. New Zealand, who held their nerve so many times in this tournament, even that hasn't been enough on the day. It makes for a fascinating final show on ESPNcricinfo Matchday UK 2019. Ajit Agarkar is a neutral and has felt that gut-wrenching feeling that all of New Zealand, including Daniel Vettori, would have felt. We will hear very shortly from Graham Swan and Murli Karthik at Lords, along with Mel Farrell and Alexis Nunes capturing the mood. I'm going to come to you, Dan Vettori. You've had some time to process that and tell me what you've made of it.
Do we have to listen this morning? Do we have to go to him? What a game. I think that if you take the neutral perspective, you look back on a game of cricket like that, at half-time, 241, was that enough? We thought it was always going to be challenging, and the way that New Zealand started was exceptional, and then the partnership between Buttler and Stokes. But I think it's going to be remembered for so many little moments, and you
Yes.
touched on some of them there, and unfortunately all those little moments probably went against New Zealand. And I think Kane Williamson summed it up pretty well in the post-match conference in his phlegmatic way of, you know, these moments happen, you just sort of wish they didn't happen in a World Cup final.
So much incident, and the problem is that I still can't get the conversation to drive off, yes, we finally had a winner. Because you don't seem to even get that. Now, is this a time to perhaps talk about whether this is an appropriate way to decide a World Cup? And it's not the lawmakers' fault. Everything was laid down in stone. We've ourselves ridiculed that you can't be going to head-to-head versus net run rate midway through the tournament on when it suits you. But there's just something about this game that you cannot digest as one team beating the other. I mean, is that a fair comment?
Yeah, completely. I think I was a bit emotional, and I'm a complete neutral actually watching that. I mean, how heartbreaking would it be for New Zealand? I think they did most things right. In fact, a lot of the things better than England did, and still to end up losing because of hitting less boundaries. Like you said, I think the rules were already made, so everyone was aware of them. Who would have thought?
Let's be clear. Someone would have said, how do we decide it if the super over started? Someone said, most boundaries left, and this is never going to happen. Let's put it down.
Look, England held the nerve, I guess, at the last ball of that. A 24-year-old playing first time for England comes and bowls that over in spite of getting whacked for a 6 of the third ball of that over. So you've got to give them credit to do that, but you've got to feel for New Zealand.
Okay, I'm going to find it hard, but I will touch upon incident by incident. But since we're into that sort of conversation right now, is it that bad to share the trophy? Must we have to decide the winner?
I think when it's like that, after the two nominal ways of winning a game is, you know, most runs after 50 overs and then most runs after a super over, and if both of those are tied, it feels unfortunate to go to that. But it is set in the rules. I'm not sure how you strategise for.
If it was a washout, the teams would have shared the trophy. And I saw this. I picked this up anyway.
Hopefully, going forward, there is something done about it. If another situation arises, which I highly doubt, we'll have one more.
Yeah, because I would like to start asking you questions on where New Zealand got this wrong, but I can't get myself to. They've given this everything. It's literally come down to 2 moments or maybe 3 moments of just fortune going against them, and it could have gone for them. First ball of the innings, Jason Roy with the marginal LBW. Let's say that's fair. But Trent Boult, who's taken some extraordinary catches, has just stepped on the boundary at the wrong time, and then, well, you've got the ricochet. Can you explain that?
I think the first two happen all the time, and I think you accept those umpiring decisions around umpire's call. The catch just one step too far. I mean, it would have been game over if that hadn't happened, because it was Stokes, and Stokes was so incredible.
Might I ask you, knowing someone like Trent Boult, who's perhaps one of the best boundary riders in international cricket, what's happened there? Because it looks like it's one of the easier ones that he's just
You're right. I
step
mean,
up.
he's taken so many spectacular catches. He's just misjudged his. I think he didn't think he'd have to take that step back. I think he
Yes.
just overbalanced at the last second because he was reasonably casual about it. And as you said, Bolt's been such a good boundary rider, particularly his catching. That's why he's there. I mean, not many fast bowlers go from bowling the penultimate over to jumping on the boundary rope, but he's there because he's such a good fielder and catcher.
Okay, the second incident of the ricochet now, and I'm not pointing a finger at all on Ben Stokes,
No.
who's on his
I don't
face
think
down, he has no idea where that's going. Batsmen tend to not run as a gesture of courtesy in cricket, even though the rules can permit them if they want to take the overthrow. On this occasion, it's gone to the boundary, so no matter if everyone on that field didn't want to, it's still runs that are
Yeah, I mean,
penalised.
you could
Is
see
that a
him-
rule change that needs to be looked at?
I think it's a hard thing to change. I mean, look, I think you could see his reaction immediately.
Yes.
I mean, that he was apologetic about it. We don't quite know, but it's highly unlikely that he would have run if it had not gone to the boundary. Does it have to be changed? I'm not so
I
sure.
mean, it sounds unbelievable to penalise the
Yeah.
fielding side for something like that. Now that has happened at the highest stage.
Especially at that time of the game.
Yes.
I think it's a often spoken about conversation in dressing rooms. Are you going to take a runner for ricochets off you to win the World Cup final? And we almost had that example today. And
I mean, because of what's happened now.
Fortunately for Stokes, it went for a boundary. I mean, if he'd run, it would have been obviously a huge talking point. There's nothing he can do about that. That's just one of the most unfortunate things I've seen. And it happened to be in a World Cup final at a critical time, and it went against New Zealand. So it makes it even harder to stomach.
Let me continue on incidents and let's go deeper into the super over now and perhaps decision making where it has to be tested and it's under the most pressure you can possibly imagine. But the choice of Trent Bolt to bowl that over after he's had one of his rare, perhaps his only off day this whole World Cup. Did you think that was a mistake?
I think they went to the most experienced bowler. There was probably a discussion around Ferguson and Bolt, but I never saw Ferguson take his hat off at any stage. It looked like Bolt was the decision right from the start, and that's because he's New Zealand's best bowler and he has been for a long, long time. So
Also
I think
was bowling the 50th over, so he
he
was
just
ready
kept
to bowl
going.
as well.
It was from that end, all those little things. They probably thought Stokes would come out to the big boundary.
Okay, so that's an understandable decision. And as a fast bowler though, can you question what Trent Bolt's trying to do there, given what seems to have caused the batsman more problems during the course of that innings, that shortish, slow delivery?
It's a tough one.
Yes.
I think you try and go to the safest ball, which is a Yorker. It's just that today wasn't his best day. So he couldn't hit the mark as often as he would have liked. He still bowled 2 or 3 pretty good ones. The other ones, unfortunately, went for boundaries, which then, took them to 15. Look, he's done that a million times for New Zealand. So I'm not surprised. I think Kane Williamson just went to his most experienced guy who could keep his nerve. Unfortunately, wasn't his day. I mean, that's the only thing that you could have perhaps thought of, that he wasn't having a great day on the field or with the ball. Whether you could have looked at Lockie Ferguson. I don't think the slow ball was an option, especially with a left-hander there.
Yeah.
He probably would have taken him down, Ben Stokes. I think Yorker was the safest bet to go.
Let's also not forget that there is Ben Stokes in that himself, who's played an innings that he'd remember for a while now. And now take a hat off to Ben Stokes, who we were wondering what his approach was. Josh Buttler seemed to be the enforcer, the man who would have been the bigger wicket at the time. And Ben Stokes has played one of those innings which, if you don't get over the line, comes under serious scrutiny. But in some way now, he has got them over the line.
Well, he was scratchy at the start. It was difficult. Him and Morgan together were put under a lot of pressure by the New Zealand bowlers. And I think it was only when Buttler came to the crease and was able to score it, almost a runner ball, that took that pressure off Stokes and relinquished all I suppose, that he thought he had to do. And then he only started to come to the forefront at the back end of the innings. So that partnership won the World Cup for England.
Yes.
Buttler and Stokes. And particularly Buttler, as I said, he looked the most comfortable out of both teams on a difficult surface.
I mean, a partnership of 110 between Buttler and Stokes. So it's not like we're not giving England the credit that they duly deserve. And perhaps if we are to look at these moments and the partnership rebuilt after they were in trouble, the over that Jofra Archer bowled, which I'll come to next now, as 24 or 25-year-old that he's managed to put off, that's something.
Yeah, and not to forget their bowling performance.
Yes.
But that over, I mean, you bowl a wide first time you're he's played a handful of one days before coming into a World Cup, barely any experience at this level. You're bowling in a World Cup final when your team's never won a World Cup final before. Executes most of those balls well. I mean, Nisham got him away for one. But apart from that, you can see the ability that he has, but to just execute under pressure. And even that last ball, went for the safest ball which you can bowl, Yorker at close to 150 kilometers. Must be under a lot of pressure after that.
The faith that Morgan has in him to go to that, as you say, he's only played a dozen one-day games. Here's Chris Woakes there, here's Plunkett with that experience, Mark Wood, all very experienced bowlers have done a great job for England, but he went to Jofra Archer, and that's a testament to his skill, and also I think a testament to the way he bowled in the game. His back 5 overs, I think one for 20 odd were incredible. So I think Morgan backed that, but still hadn't bowled for 4 hours. So he just warmed up on the sideline and trotted in and nailed it, really.
We've seen some remarkable fielding under pressure, the catching from New Zealand, the pickups from Trent Boult to affect 2 run-outs when it mattered, not to mention the last bit where again the fielder has to get into the gloves if Jos Buttler gets it right. I mean, this was a game of high standard to some degree, you could say, a fitting World Cup finale advertisement.
Under that pressure as well, I think the Boult pick-up off a shocking throw, I think, from Satner to get the run-out is, I mean, just exemplifies it all. How to have the presence of mind to scoop that up under all that pressure. Nisham as well to run out the last person. I think it was Jason Roy for England. Those 2 catches, I mean, Lockie Ferguson, that's brilliant. Tim Southee, reserve fielder. There's so many moments in this game that'll be remembered, and it's sad that there had to be a loser because there are so many special moments in it.
And yet, if we are to look at one thing that has ailed New Zealand, which perhaps even in the final they didn't overcome, was just the batting didn't quite live up to what they possibly needed. And again, a score of 241 with the highest score of 55 by Henry Nicholls. That's perhaps the one thing you think let New Zealand down this tournament.
Yeah, and I mean, once again, it's the way England bowled didn't allow them to, but you would expect that there would have been 250, 260 we talked about at the start of the game. If they'd managed to scrape through with that, with how well they've bowled through the tournament, then you would think that would have easily been enough. But it was just one of those games where a lot of things went against them. And once again, to reflect on what Kane said, I just wish it wasn't in this game.
No one can possibly think of what it's like to be in the losing end of this. But what does this do? If you can speculate, if you can try and imagine what is coming so close and yet, being counted or being appointed as losers or anointed as losers, what does that do?
The beer tastes terrible in the shed. I don't know that much. It'll taste bitter and horrible. I don't know. I think it'll be almost a sad dressing room. It'll take them a long time to recover from that, albeit that they deal with it with such humility. I mean, the way that Kane spoke after the game is incredible. The way that the English players acknowledged New Zealand and the way that New Zealand acknowledged the English players, I think was what we expected. But it's just, I mean, they've got to get on a plane flight probably tomorrow. It's going to be very tough, very difficult.
You're proud of this campaign, though, that New Zealand have had?
Exceptional. I think the expectations on them were to make a semi-final, I think, apart from Misbah. Misbah didn't expect that. Everyone else did. But to just that victory against India was an amazing victory, to put that performance together, and then again today, and then 2 ties. It's almost not like it's not a loss to a lot of people. It's just the wrong side of the rules, but it is what it is, and England are the victors.
I mean, 102 overs. England couldn't beat them in 102 overs.
So. And they've treated us to perhaps the most dramatic cricket all tournament, against Bangladesh, against South Africa, against the West Indies, in the semi-final against India, and now here. I mean, you'd think at some point someone in the New Zealand team is going to have an issue with their heart. Watching this final as perceived neutrals, we couldn't help but feel for New Zealand. It's amazing how Dan VETTORI's kept his composure essentially throughout. Probably a good thing that he's retired. But we will hear from Graham Swan in a bit. But what does this mean for England now? Oh, I don't think they'll care. They'll just say, we won it. We hit more boundaries and we won.
No, and they deserve to.
And
I think they were under pressure to qualify for the semi-finals, beat India and New Zealand, 2 really good teams, beat them well, and then smashed Australia in the semi-final, when Australia has never lost a semi-final of a World Cup. So, we're just talking about how heartbreaking it is for New Zealand, but you can't take anything away from England. I think they were under immense pressure after losing early wickets and that partnership from Stokes and Buttler. When you're playing at home, and particularly a team like England, when you're almost expected to win even before the tournament started because of the performances they've had over the last couple of years, or maybe a little bit more, you could see the pressure that they felt. It was only thanks to that partnership that they could get anywhere close.
I think that's a really salient point around we acknowledge the winners from the final, but England probably won the tournament in terms of the way they played at the back end of it. As it's exactly right. The performance against India, the performance against New Zealand, the performance against Australia showed how such a dominant team they were, and then they had to scrap against a really strong New Zealand team, and New Zealand did exactly the same thing. So over the course of the tournament, England proved that they are an exceptionally good side and deserved the favourite tag and deserve to win the final.
Yeah, it's a good time to remember. If you might think that England are lucky to win this final, just think of what they had to do to get to it. The fact that they had to beat but certainly the three strongest teams in the tournament, in India, New Zealand, and then Australia in a semi-final after having lost to them in the league phase. So that's beating the very best teams to firstly make the final, and then as the rules played it out, they had their moments, and you'd think that they are deserving winners. If we look back at this campaign for England and what this could possibly mean for their cricket, you knew the expectations that were up. It's one thing that they go on about it quite a bit, England, but in reality, this would have meant a lot for England cricket, given their reputation and whatnot, and their lack of success, which is perhaps more striking than even New Zealand's in the history of cricket.
Well, I think there was a lot mentioned around their style of play, but I think the thing that allows them to play style is they're such good cricketers. I mean, they have produced some exceptional cricketers over the last few years. To bring Jason Roy in, to see how dramatic he's been, how successful he's been. Bairstow to go up the top of the order has been exceptional. Root and Morgan's records over the last couple of years, Buttler, Stokes, it just goes on and on. So they have a quality, and that quality of players allowed them to play that style of cricket. And I think they can keep doing that irrespective of if Morgs is in charge or someone else comes along after the tournament.
And if we have to look at just what's impressed about England, it seems like they covered more bases or ticked more boxes than a lot of other teams. We thought their bowling might be a potential weakness. JOFRA Archer suddenly changed the conversation. They made some tough calls on selection, left out the second spinner. Liam Plunkett's had a big impact since his return. I think there's a lot of credit that needs to be given to England in terms of just ticking more boxes.
Oh, complete credit, I think, to the team management, because those are not easy decisions to make, because Moeen Ali's been a good player for them. And he bowls well in tandem with Adil Rashid. You don't sort of leave him out of the 11 towards the end of the tournament when they have to win. To make those decisions, you should know your players inside out, and that's what they've done over the last few years, 2 or 3 years that they've been building towards this, is identify players who can do certain roles, play or bowl in certain conditions, or bat in certain conditions, or play a certain way, and that's always the recipe for success. You don't always go on and win the World Cup, but they certainly put a lot of things in place to give them the best chance. And the finish that they had to the tournament, okay, today it was hard to separate the two teams, but the last 3 games before this, they've absolutely played well under pressure.
Best World Cup? Best World Cup campaign?
Yeah, I mean, every time someone says one-day cricket's under threat, a World Cup comes along and produces this. And I think the format allowed this World Cup to happen. The multitude of games where big team against big team, crucial victories were required, and hopefully going forward, this is the format that continues.
Yeah, I mean, this format did attract some criticism, especially from those that perhaps in their own ways rightfully were demanding more inclusivity and more inclusion from the associate nations, and this was the World Cup trimming down. But it is a format that allowed to go to the very last day, the very last overs of the league phase to determine what the semi-final lineup would look like, and then eventually it took us 102 overs to determine a winner, and even then it couldn't be done directly off the scoreboard from what we've seen. So hats off to this World Cup. Cricket needed it, and cricket served itself. The conversation was around rain and all sorts of things. So that rain played its own little charming part today, 15-minute delay to make sure that it had an inclusion in this World Cup final. But if you look back now at the Cricket World Cup, which we've had the privilege of covering for you on ESPNcricinfo for Matchday UK 2019, we've asked Dan Vettori, Ajit Agarkar to actually scan through the last 40 days and try and pick out the best innings of the tournament. And again, they had to change that too because of the last 100 overs. It's not like everything was decided. Shakib Al Hasan, a long time back at Taunton when he recorded with Bangladesh the highest successful run chase in World Cup cricket, that was some feat. Ben Stokes now stands in that list because of what it's eventually led to, add the few runs that he scored in the Super Over 2. Kane Williamson with a wonderful 100 on a testing day at Edgbaston. Babar Azam with a beautiful 100 of his own against New Zealand. New Zealand feature regularly on this list, don't they? One way or the other. Also at Edgbaston. And we couldn't help but keep Carlos Brathwaite in that list. Though Rohit Sharma has 5 of his own, and Johnny Bairstow played a couple when England needed it. And there are a few more from the likes of Nathan Coulter-Nile and David Warner that would all like to be in. But that's the list we've gone with. Now, if I had to ask you to pick one. as your favourites. Who'd like to go first? Ajit?
Oh, no-brainer really. Ben Stokes.
Ben Stokes final, yeah.
You probably get one opportunity in your career to make to the World Cup final. I'm sure he'd be hoping he gets more. But to go and play an innings like that when your team's in trouble and to get them, well, at least a tie and then over the line because of hitting more boundaries, which he must have contributed a few as well. So, incredible innings under pressure and tells you why they were desperate to always get him back after the off-field incidents.
Of course.
He should have 2 innings there. He should have that. Would he get eight in the Super Over, maybe 7 or something like that? So
That's
84 plus 7. So those 2 innings won the game.
Are you picking one for you?
Ben Stokes has to be Ben Stokes.
Ben
Stokes. He won the World Cup final with Buttler, but he was there at the end. He took them home, and he did it in an incredibly pressurised situation. I mean, when he came in, New Zealand were on top. It was seeming round. It was difficult, and he got through that tough stage and took them to victory. It was brilliant.
All right. Kane Williamson, a fair or a worthy or different, but I'm quite thinking now quite an interesting and worthy choice for player of the tournament. Dan?
Yeah, it was interesting that they obviously batted exceptionally. They gave it to for leadership as well around that. So that was an interesting take on it. I think Shakib was exceptional throughout the tournament. 600 runs and I think 11 wickets, 12 wickets, something like that. Sure. I mean, is incredible. So there was a lot of contenders. I think in World Cups, normally there's someone who just stands out. Rohit Sharma had a great tournament. Joe Root, David Warner, Mitchell Starc. So a lot of contenders, but I think the emotion of the final, probably let's give it to someone who's close by.
Perhaps that, and perhaps also let's give New Zealand something, for God's sake. Let's just give it to them. We can't possibly leave them empty-handed. It's been an unprecedented World Cup in many ways. Rohit Sharma scoring more hundreds than any batsman ever has. Mitchell Starc taking more wickets than any bowler ever has. And Shakib Al Hasan with both bat and ball doing something that no player has in the history of the tournament. In the end, perhaps to split the difference between those three, Kane Williamson is the right way to go. Let's have a look at the top spells now, and let's go to the ball. And perhaps bowlers have indeed won them World Cups on crucial days. You look at Shaheen Afridi's 6 for, it wasn't to be enough for Pakistan to qualify for the semi-finals. Mitchell Starc's 5 for against New Zealand at Lord's. He had a couple of key 5-ers as the game against the West Indies too, then he turned around. Lasith Malinga's 4-wicket haul, that perhaps is the key spell that set the World Cup alight, when it was going in one direction and then all of a sudden it just went crazy from there. Chris Woakes' 3 for that outclassed Australia in the second semi-final. And boy, Matt Henry with a spell that he'll remember for a long time to break the back of India's batting in the first semi at Old Trafford. Mr. Agarkar, who are you going for first?
Chris Woakes for me. I think semi-final game, losing the toss, bowling first on what was supposed to be a really good deck. Australia has never lost a semi-final. You wanted to start well. Got hit for a boundary first ball, which was a little bit full to David Warner. But after that, to produce that kind of ball against David Warner, who's in such good form, and then obviously get Starc and Hanscom, which is okay. But just to set the tone at the start in such a big game where you know that you might be under the pump a little bit if you don't get early wickets, was a special performance.
Are you going to go for Shaheen Afridi just to keep Misbah happy, or is Matt Henry part of your
For
picks?
exactly the same reasons as Ajit said, I'll go Matt Henry. I think just that crucial spell in a World Cup semi-final, defending a moderate total, how we talked about, and to get Rohit Sharma out with possibly the only way you can get him out is the perfect ball, just pitching it off and nicking off. So that really set up New Zealand's chances and that momentum in that semi-final. So it's only 3 wickets, but I think they're 3 incredibly important wickets.
Oh, you bet. Jimmy Neesham contributing to that when Matt Henry got the 3-wicket haul that eventually would earn him his second Man of the Match award this World Cup, and perhaps the most important one for him. And Jimmy Neesham will perhaps even feature on our list of top catchers of this tournament. You think back to that, and maybe Trent Boult, if he would have just kept his foot off the line, would have featured on this list too. He should have probably featured anyway, given that stunner he took to keep Carlos Brathwaite on the losing side in that epic game at Manchester. But Ben Stokes on the opening day of the tournament, blinder one-handed. The tournament has started and ended with Stokes' brilliance. Ravindra Jadeja is a substitute fielder in the game against England to dismiss Jason Roy of Kuldeep Yadav. Sheldon Cottrell with that outstretched left hand to get the wicket of Steve Smith running on the fine leg boundary. Martin Guptill closer in for dismissing Steve Smith. Smith himself's taken a couple that are worthy of here. And Jimmy Neesham to get Dinesh Karthik in the game that we were just talking about. You've taken one sensational catch in your life. You've taken a lot, but I remember one specific with the 2015 World Cup. I'll let you go first to pick one.
That's tricky. That is a great list of players. I think I think Stokes sort of set the tournament alight. I think that was a major talking point early on in the tournament, his bit of brilliance. I think they acknowledged that he might have been out of place and he may have just run in
the
a
one
little
that
bit.
he misjudged. Then made spectacular.
But made up for it brilliantly. But I couldn't separate any of those. But Stokes, because of the way it sort of presented the tournament at the start.
I remember you taking perhaps one of the catches of the '99 World Cup, running in low down. It was Suffield at the time. Yeah, I remember that one, and you stayed your ground. So you've taken your share of brilliant ones. And which one?
Yeah, we could have added a couple more today from New Zealand actually. Yes. From Lockie and Saudi, both exceptional under pressure. I think Cottrell for me, just for the sheer brilliance, what he did on that boundary, one-handed, then to keep his balance, I think flick it back, and then still almost nonchalantly run back and take it. So incredible. I think he's taken one more. Brilliant, but just great skill there.
Yeah, perhaps Alex Carey deserves an honourable mention too for catching his own helmet in extraordinary fashion when he had the pain of a cut from a Jofra Archer delivery that a few batsmen have copped on the helmet. Hashim Amla on day one, Alex Carey then. What a tournament for Jofra Archer, who's left his imprint on the World Cup final too, and eventually it is England's final to savour. Indeed, it's coming home can now be sung. Murali Karthik's mocked that anthem from the start of this World Cup. Graham Swan's only been singing that anthem as if it's the only thing to go with every day in the World Cup. Mel Farrell is sandwiched between them, and now we're ready to hear from this lot at Lord's. Let's go to Mel.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm just in pieces. I am jelly after that. Nerves are fried. I don't know about these guys, but particularly Swanee. Have you ever witnessed anything like that?
Well, I didn't witness a great deal in the last hour because I paced up and down the back of the media centre. I was so nervous when Jos Buttler got out. I thought that was the game. When Ben Stokes dived, it hit his bat. It went for 4. It was just that game had everything. And the super over, I cannot believe England have just won the World Cup in that manner. I've never felt worse but happier in my entire life. It's stupid.
I can see it.
Can I have a chair or something?
We'll get you somewhere to lie down in a minute. I mean, obviously as a neutral here, it might have been a bit different, but how seriously exciting was that?
Look, as a neutral, I could have never thought that I would be so frazzled with my nerves, to be very honest. It had everything. Can you imagine luck going a team's way, things going against a team, and then a super over tie, another tie, and then to be winning the manner in which, on a boundary count, it just, I don't think I've ever witnessed a game like that. And that too, final, Sunday, Wimbledon going down to the wire. It's just been unbelievable.
Well, that was the whole thing at the time.
Everything.
New Zealand were just about to win the game, and Roger Federer, who I desperately wanted to win Wimbledon, lost. My whole world collapsed and then built it back up in a matter of minutes. That is just, I feel incredible. I'm very emotional. England, we were so bad in my day at one-day cricket. And this team have been so brilliant for 4 years. They came into this tournament as favourites. They almost mucked it up. The last 5 games, and they played 4 brilliant games of cricket. Today, the pressure definitely got to them in that chase. New Zealand, you have to take your hats off, were phenomenal today. And as Kartik said, they didn't have a single shred of luck whatsoever. I bet Dan feels sick in the studio. I don't blame you, because everything went against New Zealand. On any other day, they'd have won that game. But it's obviously written in the wind that England were going to win by hook or by crook today. And somehow they've got that trophy.
I mean, when you come down to it, after 50 overs apiece, the teams were tied, and after a super over, the teams were tied. How emotionally gutted must New Zealand feel?
Yeah, absolutely. And look at the way the ebbs and flows in that super over, because the way Jimmy Neesham started as 6, and then all you need is 7 of 4. And then he's been bowling something different, and he doesn't connect the ball for 2 balls, and then you're left with 3 of 2, and you would think in a T20 and a modern phenomenon anybody would get it. And then again Jason Roy, who was fielding like an absolute champion, suddenly muffs 1 to give 2, and then you think, oh, is it going New Zealand's way? And again an ebb and flow, and then Martin Gutfield, who's possibly one of the fastest runners, obviously he couldn't get off the blocks because of the fact that it was a Yorker which he had to dig out. Oh, unbelievable. Seriously, unbelievable scenes. Can you imagine what the players must be going through, what the England... and absolutely right, Swanee, you feel sad for somebody like Kane Williamson and the entire New Zealand, the way they've played right through the tournament. They've been the unsung heroes, and today, if certain things, Jason Roy, first ball, I thought everybody would have given it out, and then it didn't go their way. And then... look, I'm lost for words. Ben Stokes hitting that ball, one of the best fielders, Trent Bolt catches it, loses his balance, and then finally that a couple of runs goes for a 9 required of 3 balls, an overthrow, everything. Oh,
It's the most ludicrous game of cricket in a good way. I mean, that tied test that everyone talks about being the best game of cricket ever. Sorry, guys, it's just been replaced. I know it's a one-dayer, but that at the home of cricket for England to win their first ever World Cup is just the most ludicrously entertaining. Worse for an English player or previous player to watch that game and feel every emotion as if I was in that changing room. Honestly, I feel so proud of Owen Morgan, so proud of the team, but so proud of New Zealand as well, because I wrote them off. I didn't think they were capable of playing that game, and they absolutely blitzed that. Under pressure, they were incredible.
I know, look, also, we're all so emotional. Look, one guy I think we need to point out and say something about. I was convinced when Ben Stokes was batting that he was going to need 19 off the last over, and I was having flashbacks to Kolkata when he was bowling and Carlos Brathwaite came out to bat. But
Well, I was very glad they didn't give him the ball to bowl that Super Over, I'll be honest.
But seriously, just the nerve that he showed, and I guess also the nerve you'd have to say that Jofra Archer showed in bowling that final over was something, wasn't it?
To bowl the bouncer when 3 off 2, to go away from the block, I bowled a very quick bounce that Nisham couldn't get away, was gutsy. I was sat next to Waka Yunus in the press box. I said, should he bowl a bouncer? And he went, way too risky. That's Waka Yunus, the greatest death bowler of all time. So to have the nerve to do it and to pull it off so perfectly.
Yeah, percentages, because every fast bowler, and Waqar Younis was one of possibly the best death bowlers along with Wasim Akram. You would think death, because a bouncer, top edge, the game's done. The game's done and dusted, and especially with the way Nisham was hitting. So gutsy from Jofra Archer, and look, he's right, things had to go England's way, and they did. They did to perfection, and it was just a brilliant script, just for everyone to have that kind of a game. It will be a game which will be remembered, and I'm pretty sure people don't remember runners-up, but New Zealand will be remembered.
Okay, so final word. We're coming to the end of our World Cup journey. It's been emotional, it's been long. How would you sum up this World Cup for you, Swanee?
Well, it's got the ultimate ending for me, for an Englishman. This is such a big thing in England. This game was shown on free-to-air television. That is a huge thing in England. We haven't had that for 15 years. Dwindling participation numbers for kids, everything. This was shown to the nation. That game would be a lot of kids' first experience of cricket. They will take up cricket. They will love cricket. This is such a big thing in England, and that team deserved to win a World Cup, and they've pulled it off. And nonsense.
Kartik, final word.
Yeah, is there a script written by God? 11 won by the host team, 15 won by the host team, 19 won by the host team, and a team which started as favourites. Again, a bit of a blip in the middle, but just to come back so strongly and hold their nerves, and the way they played, Morgie was brilliant. Just that last team huddle, and everybody was chirping, and I'm thinking, look, I'm a neutral, I'm jangling here. How are these guys going to play there? But I suppose when you're sitting out, when you're not in control, that's how you feel.
Okay, so that's it from us. It's been an amazing final. Really has been the ultimate ending that you could never have expected. I'm going to go find somewhere for Swanee to lie down.
Thank you, please.
He's done. We're all done, and my voice is about to go. That's it from us. I hope you guys have enjoyed it back there.
I must say I didn't expect it, but that is a lot of dignity in victory from Graham Swan. So well done to Swanee. Many thanks to him, and congratulations to him and all the English fans. And thank you to Murli Karthik and Mel Farrell as well. Now, as we wrap things up for all our wonderful viewers in the Caribbean, I hope you've enjoyed our coverage on ESPNcricinfo Matchday UK 2019. Karthik with some pertinent words. 11 won by the home team, 15 by the home team, 19. Next one's coming.
To India, is it?
Isn't it? Perhaps a trend? No. New Zealand should win the next World Cup.
Yeah, we were the home team 2015. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, you didn't get the final. You won the big three. You should have got the final. Anyway, this has been a fun World Cup, hasn't it? We're all going to take a bit of a breather now. And what are you going to do tomorrow? Wimbledon and this is just, we don't know what to do actually now.
Here we go and dissect Wimbledon now.
Yeah, I mean,
it'll be our breather.
It was. I thought that'll be the fun little straightforward thing to watch. That's not to be.
Get some sleep, I guess.
That's a good way to go about it. It's been a fascinating World Cup. Thank you very much to Dan VETTORI and to Ajit Agarkar. Viewers on ESPNcricinfo, stay with us. There's more we want to take you with as we look at reactions to this World Cup. But many thanks to all our viewers in the Caribbean. This is where we do say goodbye. Won't be long before we treat you to more coverage by ESPNcricinfo. Until then, from all of us on ESPNcricinfo Matchday UK 2019 throughout the course of our coverage of the ICC Cricket World Cup 2019, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye. and ESPNcricinfo. Stay with us because there's no end to Cricinfo's runtime. And on a day like this, when we've been treated to and served the very best game that the ODI game has ever offered. And let's pick out some of the reactions now, because you can't separate cricket and Twitter anymore in terms of an outlet to just express yourself. And this game has just demanded for more and more expression. So while I thought Anubhav was done, he's not. He's back. And I think we deserve another social corner. Take it away, Anubhav.
Thank you so much, Ronak. I don't think any combination of words can do justice to the humdinger of an encounter that we just witnessed, but I'm hoping that the lineup that we have in store as part of the social corner comes closest to doing so. It's only fitting that we kick things off with England's hero, Ben Stokes, New Zealand-born Ben Stokes, who said after the game, I said to Kane, I'll be apologizing for that for the rest of my life. Ben Stokes commenting on that fortunate ricochet. Up next, we have VVS Lakshman, who's talking about the reversal of fortunes experienced by Jimmy Neesham and Ben Stokes. And he says, Jimmy Neesham was thinking about quitting cricket a year ago and nearly won the World Cup for his country today. And Ben Stokes, after what happened in the T20 World Cup final in Kolkata in 2016, won the match for his country today. Lesson sport teachers: never give up and keep dreaming. Up next, we've got Mitch McLenigal, who's echoing the sentiments of every single Kiwi out there. And he says, that is actually brutal. Can we come back tomorrow, please? Next, we have Jofra Archer, who's been better than any soothsayer out there. Better than the soothsayer in Julius Caesar, better than the three witches that we saw in Macbeth. And this was Jofra Archer back in 2014, who said 16 from 6. Then Jofra Archer back in 2015, who said wouldn't mind a super over. And then Stuart Broad commenting about like an hour back, saying, you got your wish, Joff. That's quite the astute foresight that he possesses. Next, we have Darren Ganga, who's echoing the sentiment of every single neutral that's out there, pleading with the ICC. ICC, please allow this World Cup trophy to be shared between both England as well as New Zealand. Hashtag simply the most epic final. Hashtag best scripted finale. HBO, are you watching? Next, we have Wimbledon empathizing with the ICC, saying, hello ICC, how are you coping at your end? And we'll conclude proceedings with Gary Lineker, who during the game said the great Lewis Hamilton wins another British Grand Prix. What a day this could be for English sports stars. What a day it was for English sports stars.
Thank you very much, Anubhav. What a day then for England. You have to put your hat out to them. The team of the tournament in many ways, and what a turnaround it's been since 2015 after they became the biggest team to not make the quarterfinals, blown away by New Zealand at Wellington, decided to play a brand of cricket that was mirrored from what Brendan McCullum did with the New Zealand team that Dan Vettori was also part of. And now this is perhaps a great culmination to English cricket, to taking tough calls, going in a different direction, and a worthy reward, Ajit. Last word.
Yeah, you know, I mean, absolutely deserving. As heartbreaking as it has been for New Zealand, I don't think they deserve to lose, but you've got to give it to England. I think they played under pressure and have done the job.
Dan, final words.
England are a great team. I think they were picked at the start of the tournament, and they're rightly so there in the final. I think the narrative of the final sort of takes away from how good a team they were, but there were two amazing teams on that day. Gave cricket such a shot in the arm. I'm not sure it needed it, but an amazing game that people will remember forever. So brilliant for cricket.
Let's take no credit away from New Zealand in terms of them making this World Cup what it was. So I don't think you've done much of you don't deserve any credit for that, but I'm going to give it to you because you're the closest.
I'll pass
I
it
can
on.
give to New Zealand. Yeah, just pass it on.
No problem.
Yeah, they've lit the tournament alight. Thank you very much, Dan Vettori. It's been an absolute pleasure. I wish we could have had a slightly different chat, but it's always fun talking cricket with you. Long flight, not as long as the boys in England, but it's a long flight.
It's not too far away either. So let's wrap this up.
We hope to see you back. We hope to see you back very soon. Ajit Agarkar, always a pleasure. It won't be long before we see you again. You're going to be back the minute we have big news from the Indian camp, whenever that might be. Anubhav, always a pleasure with you as well. Thank you for your first World Cup, and thank all of you on ESPNcricinfo for joining us through the course of the ICC Cricket World Cup 2019. Expect so much more on the site, in the aftermath, in the next hangover.